When I was told that a new Ari Aster movie was coming out, I felt the same excitement and anticipation as how I used to feel when older Shyamalan movies were coming out. Immediately, I watched the trailer and waited patiently for one of modern day's best directors and trailblazers of horror to tell another story. Now that I've finally seen it, I wanted to make a video sharing my thoughts and review of 2025's Eddington. I'll try and keep this video as spoiler-free as I can because I think the fourth theatrical release of Aster's is one of the best films I've seen in a while and demands viewership. If you haven't seen this one, you must. Call it an American Civil Duty. Anyway, welcome to Bullfinger Reviews, and let's begin with my review of Eddington. The IMDb description of this movie is, in May of 2020, a standoff between a small-town sheriff and mayor sparks a powder keg as neighbor is pitted against neighbor in Eddington, New Mexico. But this barely even scratches 1/100th of what lies ahead when you watch it. First thing I wanted to say is that there is so much in this movie that it deserves to be unpacked and dissected. Too easily could we see here on YouTube hundreds of video essays on this film, which I'm honestly not surprised considering the countless video essays made for all of this director's other works. My channel as well is not innocent of this. The guy makes good movies, what can I say? From the very beginning of this movie, with certain color choices, dialogue, and shot setups, I knew this was going to be an incredible movie. I was super worried about the political spin and how it was going to be biased on one side or the other, and especially with the induction of COVID into the story, I was worried it was going to be delivered in a way that would make my eyes roll. Which is normally the case, but not with Eddington. Somehow, this movie remains completely raw, neutral, and grounded in complete objectivity. COVID, politics, ideologies, and the constant polarization of talking points we live and breathe would normally be a nauseating subject that we wish we could simply escape from. But with Eddington, what the characters represent, and the way the story goes, this felt needed and genuinely entertaining to watch. I absolutely loved this movie. I felt it was a mirror to America, and I feel in time, just as the narrative of the movie reveals, the truth of all the chaos and projections will be apparent. That being said, mirrors can often be clouded by our own subjective idea of who the person we see looking back at us is. And from what I've been reading with recent adamant opinions of the film, this movie will be incredibly divisive and misunderstood for quite some time. I digress, and I'll simply explain what this movie does right and why it's worth watching, and I'll also mention a few critiques that I have. The Western style of political ideologies expressed in these very accurate character portrayals is a hilariously perfect dynamic. Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal are incredible, and it just seems like all parties involved in showing the extremes of the right and left do not hold back a shred in their portrayals. Austin Butler, despite having little to no screen time really in comparison with the other characters, has a performance that actually sold me on him as an actor, and I'm looking forward to seeing his work in Darren Aronofsky's new movie later this year, Caught Stealing. I loved this performance, and this character. Emma Stone's performance was subdued and humble, but the impact and presence in the darker elements added to the story immeasurably. The route their characters went was my favorite in the film. Which brings me to another thing. I don't think anyone could really guess where this movie would go when it comes to what literally happens with each character, which made the journey extremely engaging and memorable. What's perfect about this movie is that we as the audience have seen these characters before, many times in our own lives over the years, in the people and divisive political climate that doesn't seem to ever stop ramping up. That being said, this leads me to my absolute favorite part of the story Eddington shares. Eddington is a story about the fallacy of political ideologies and alignments. It shows the reality of what happens in the shadows and shines a light on how the real enemy exploits us, the people in America, and will stop at nothing to achieve its goals. And while this appears to be an unstoppable force, as we see in society and accurately represented in the film, the last 20 minutes of this movie creates this perfect bad omen of the forces and times to come. I want to emphasize that this movie was absolutely hilarious. The humor for me hit on every level where I had to catch myself because for once I might have been the loudest reaction in the theater with my genuine laughter. Beau is Afraid was in my opinion one of Ari Aster's most ambitious projects, and for me personally, that actually took away from the story and the experience overall. With Eddington, I'm relieved to say that the ambitious choices of delivery and representation will resonate and land in tangible reality this time around. For Eddington, I was actually sort of anticipating a real sci-fi horror type scenario to unfold with the direction of the story, and I was initially disappointed with the quote-unquote horror aspect of this movie. But when I sat and thought deeply about this movie as a whole and the feelings brought up, I can recognize that this is quite horrific to watch, but I wouldn't really call it a horror movie. Despite my disappointment, the direction and the way the story goes is very concise, and I really like that about this movie. Which I guess now I'll go over some of the issues, albeit few, that I had. First thing is the movie's a little long and it feels like it drags in the middle. The horror aspect wasn't what I would have wanted in this movie, but if it went my way, I feel the decisiveness of the message would be weaker, which takes away from the film as a whole. Other than those couple of things, I can't really think of much else I didn't like. The movie is not quite a masterpiece, but it's incredibly good. To wrap up this quick review, Eddington is a must-watch, and adds to the ever-growing list of Ari Aster films that demand attention. I hope audiences can see past their own projections and paradigms presented in the movie to see the true message. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all the newcomers recently. More content is coming, and if you like what you see, a like, subscribe, and comments are greatly appreciated. I'll see you in the next one.